All right, so setting up your environment. Now we're getting ready to import our databases into our Postgres server. And as we just saw, we installed the Postgres server on Windows. And so now we have to import all of these databases. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to be loading a backup. All right, so let's get into that. It's simpler than it sounds. So if we go over here into our Valentina DB, what we can see here is that we have a server already connected. But let's just say this wasn't here. Let's delete this. Well, what we would do is we would go into add a bookmark. And if we go to Postgres, what we can see here is, oh, it's defaulting itself to localhost. It's defaulting the data to Postgres and the user to Postgres, and it's defaulting the port to the port that we set it to. So all we need to fill in is the password, which was root. If we press OK, what we can see here is we're connecting to our database that we just installed. But there are no databases in here. So let's start by loading one backup. Let's create a database called employees. And now we have a database employees, but it has no tables. It has no data. And so if you remember, when we did our installation, we had all of these files in the Postgres bin folder. And there was this one file called PSQL. Well, let's take this path and let's open our command line. So if we open our command line, this command line is basically our way to talk to Windows through text, through commands. Now, oftentimes you'll remember this from the Matrix. It's a black screen and a bunch of text and you see everything happening. Well, this is kind of the same thing. And so what we want to do is we want to do the command cd, which is change directory, and we want to go to the directory that we just copied. And if we do that, now we can run PSQL. And it's going to ask the password for Mo. But Mo wasn't a user of the database, was he? Well, let's fill in root and see what happens. Oh, we get an error. Cannot connect to server. Password authentication failed for user Mo. But Mo wasn't our user. So how do we add a user? Well, if we do -u and we do Postgres, because that was our user, now we can say root. Oh, something just changed. We entered the Postgres server. Now in here, you can do things like look at the databases, and if you fill in /l, you can see that we have the employees database. So we wanted to restore a backup, but we don't have to be in here to restore a backup because our backup files are somewhere else. So let's press /q and that'll make us exit. Now there are a bunch of database scripts that we've added for you to be able to use. France, world, store, employee. And so in order to run the employee script, we want to go to the employee folder. So let's go there. Let's change directory again. Okay, so now that we're in this directory, we can't run the PSQL command the way we did because it's not known. So how are we going to do that? Well, if we go back to our computer and we go back to the C drive, program files, and we go back to Postgres 12, bin, and we go down to the bottom, what we can see over here is that you can drag PSQL into here and it will reference the path. And here we go. It's working again. It's asking the password for Mo, which we don't want. We wanted it for Postgres. So we're going to run it for Postgres. And we are going to target the database employees. And what we want to do is we want to run the file employees. So if we do employees.sql, what you'll see happen here is a backup will be restored to the database. Excuse me, it's actually -d. And then it will ask for the password, root. So just note that these are case sensitive. Uppercase D and lowercase d mean very different things. This is targeting a database. So we filled in root, and if we execute now, what you'll see is it's creating tables and it's inserting data. And we just got to let it insert data for a while. And that will allow us to have a database that has all of the records that it needs to run queries against. And we'll be doing this for another 3 databases. Script starts hanging, which it can just press Ctrl C to kickstart it to continue it, as this may happen. And so once it's done running, what we can see here is that we have data available in our public now. We have departments, we have department managers, we have employees. So let's go into employees. And what we can see here is that we have a ton of employees. And so now we just restored a backup for our employee database. Now let's do the same for the world database. So let's create a database called world. And as you can see here, no data. And so over here in our folder, if we go back one, we can see that we have a world file. So let's go and let's do cd ... which will go one directory up to scripts. And let's run the same command we did, but let's target world now. So let's target the database world and let's say world.sql. And let's fill in root. And there we go. Database imported. So the employees database is one of the biggest ones, and that's why it can hang, because it's inserting so many records. So if it hangs, just press Ctrl C and it'll kickstart it again. Otherwise, cancel the script, rerun it, and it should continue on until it finishes. It will just say that data has already been inserted. And so with the world database, now we can see that we have tables: city, country, country language. If you don't see them immediately, just press this little refresh icon. Let's create another database and let's call it France. And here we go. Here's France. Again, no data, no tables. And if we go inside our folder here, what we can see is that we have a France file. So let's run the same exact script, but let's target France and let's say france.sql. And then let's fill in root again. And there we go. Everything's inserted. So if we go inside France now, oh, nothing's there yet. Press the refresh icon. We have departments, regions, and towns. And so now for our final database, let's add a database called store. And again, nothing in here, but if you go look at our files, we have a store file. So let's go here and let's run the same command. And by pressing the up key, you can do the exact same thing. Store, and let's target store.sql. Let's press root, and there we go. Everything's inserted. So if we go into store, you can see that these queries ran much, much faster than employees. Employees takes a little while because it has so much data. You can kickstart it if it starts hanging again at certain points by just pressing Ctrl C. If you press Ctrl C twice, you may exit the script. If you press it once, it may kickstart it. There's just some lag there. So if we go inside store, you'll see here we don't see any of the tables. If we refresh, now we have customers, inventories, products. So let's go inside customers. And here we can see we have a bunch of customers with a bunch of information. So awesome. We set up our environment, and the exact same thing can be done on the 32-bit with Postgres 10. There is no difference. It will work just the same. It will work just fine. And so now that you're all set up and you have all of this ready to go, you are ready to kickstart your SQL journey with more in-depth data.